Welcome to English Life Skills Hub. Have you ever been there? Standing at some event, maybe a networking thing, coffee in hand, and your mind just goes completely blank. You want to talk to that person nearby, but nothing comes out.
Oh, absolutely. It's that universally awkward moment, isn't it? That feeling when you really want to connect, but the words just evaporate.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the good news is it really doesn't have to be that way. Today, we're really getting into mastering small talk in English. For pretty much any situation, this is something people ask about all the time, and honestly, it's so much more than just filling silence. It's like a real gateway.
It absolutely is a gateway to opportunities, to, building real connections, even advancing your career. We're hoping to really shift how you approach these conversations.
So whether you're facing, say, a crucial business meeting, or maybe just a casual party, or even just a quick chat in line somewhere, we've got you covered.
Yeah, we'll be sharing some real strategies, practical examples, and fair warning, maybe even a couple of our own slightly embarrassing small talk fails from the past.
Let's get you on track to becoming a small talk master.
Yeah.
So first things first. Why does this even matter so much? A lot of people just dismiss it, right, as like meaningless chatter.
That's such a common misconception, but honestly, in my experience, small talk is the absolute foundation. It's the starting point for almost every meaningful relationship, every opportunity, especially in English-speaking cultures.
That makes sense. You don't just dive deep immediately.
Rarely, right. You need that bridge. And, professionally, I've seen it time and time again, people who get good at small talk, they are genuinely noticeably more likely to advance in their careers. It's not just about being friendly, it's strategic.
Wow, okay. So it has a real tangible impact. How does it actually do that?
Well, primarily, think of it as social lubrication. That's the classic term, isn't it? It smooths things over, reduces tension, makes people feel comfortable, receptive. When you can do that naturally, you signal approachability, interest, trustworthiness.
And trust is huge, especially professionally.
Absolutely critical. And beyond that, for anyone learning English or navigating these cultures, it's about cultural fluency. It's learning those unwritten rules of how connection happens.
I remember reading about that engineer, the one from Brazil. Brilliant guy, perfect grammar, but felt totally invisible at work events.
Exactly, a classic case. He struggled with those nuances, the small talk part, but once he started actively working on it, things changed dramatically.
How so?
Suddenly, he was being invited onto high-profile projects. People saw him as more collaborative, more culturally integrated. It directly impacted his career trajectory.
So it's not just about being liked, it's about being seen as part of the team. And it boosts confidence too, I imagine.
Oh, massively. There's a definite shift in how you carry yourself when you know you can handle these situations. You walk into a room differently, approach people with more ease. It really is like gaining a kind of social superpower.
A social superpower, I like that. And you mentioned first impressions form fast.
Incredibly fast. Research points to it, and certainly in my professional work, I see it lasting impressions can solidify within like the first 7 seconds. 7.
Yeah.
So those initial small talk moments, they're anything but small. They're critical in shaping how you're perceived right from the get-go.
Okay, so for anyone listening who's feeling a bit nervous right now thinking about this, what would you say?
First off, nervousness is totally normal. It actually shows you care about connecting well. The really reassuring thing is small talk isn't random chaos. It follows patterns. Understandable patterns. Yeah. And once you learn them, practice them, they honestly start to feel much more natural. It becomes second nature over time.
Okay, let's break down those mechanics then. What is small talk fundamentally, and how do we start making it less intimidating?
At its core, it's the art of finding common ground, using light, accessible topics. But here's the key insight, I think. It's less about the topic itself and more about creating a shared experience in that moment. Connecting right there, right then.
Interesting. So what about conversation starters? What actually works to kick things off?
Okay, here's something that might feel a bit counterintuitive at first. Often, the most effective starters, they aren't questions.
Really? Not questions. I always thought you had to ask something.
Well, think about it. What happens when you ask, "How are you?" Usually you get,
"Fine, thanks."
Right. End of story. Not much to build on, but an observation about your shared environment, that works differently.
Like what? Give me an example.
Like, wow, this coffee smells incredible. It's exactly what I needed this morning. See? It creates an instant shared moment. They can relate to the coffee, the morning, the need for caffeine.
Or maybe something like, I love how they've decorated this place. It feels really welcoming.
Exactly. Observations about the environment, the weather, the venue itself, maybe something specific about the event, the food, even the music playing. These are all great starting points.
Why do they work so well?
Because they're neutral, they're relatable, and crucially, they're low pressure. Nobody feels put on the spot to reveal personal info. It just builds a little conversational bridge.
Okay, so you've built the bridge with an observation. How do you stop it from collapsing right after? How do you keep it flowing?
Right, this is where active listening really comes in. Good conversation, I find, is actually more about listening than talking.
Mm-hmm.
You need to genuinely listen to their reply and look for what I call conversation hooks.
Conversation hooks, what are those?
They're the little details, the specific words or ideas they mention that you can naturally grab onto and follow up on.
Okay, give me an example.
So if they respond to your comment about the venue and say, yeah, it reminds me of this little cafe I used to go to back in college, boom, hooks.
Ah, I see. So the hooks there are college, cafes, maybe nostalgia or travel.
Exactly. You've got multiple threads you can pull. So instead of just saying, oh, cool, which kind of kills the momentum,
Right.
you could ask something open-ended. Like, oh, college cafes, they have a certain vibe, don't they? What did you study back then? Or, I'm always on the hunt for great cafe spots. Where was this magical place?
Got it. Shows you're actually interested and keeps the ball rolling back and forth.
Precisely. It keeps it balanced. You're not interrogating them, but you're also not just talking about yourself.
But what about the dreaded awkward silence? When the conversation just stalls.
Yeah, everyone fears that. But honestly, those moments often cause way more panic than they should. Short pauses, they're completely normal. Think of them as breathing spaces in the conversation.
It feels like pressure, though. Like I have to fill it immediately.
It's a common feeling, but sometimes being comfortable with a brief silence can actually signal confidence. But if you do want to jumpstart things again, try a callback.
A callback.
Yeah, refer back to something they mentioned a bit earlier, like if they said they were new in town, you could circle back. You know, you mentioned earlier you're new to the city. How are you finding it so far? Any pleasant surprises?
Oh, that's smart. It shows you're paying attention.
Definitely. Another technique is the pivot to universal experiences. If you hit a dead end, just gently shift to something pretty much everyone can relate to.
Right.
Like, speaking of coffee earlier, do you have any particular morning rituals? Anything that really helps you get the day started? See? Simple, relatable.
Okay, useful tactics. What if the other person is just giving really short answers?
Yeah.
You know, the conversation minimalists.
Ah, yes. Well, first, remember, they might just be shy or distracted, maybe having an off day. It's not necessarily about you.
Right. Don't take it personally.
Exactly. The key is to make it super easy for them to engage. Try sharing something relatable about yourself first. Instead of a direct question like, what do you do? Maybe try something like, phew, I just had the longest Monday ever. You know that feeling? Where you need like 3 coffees just to function. I'm really hoping the coffee here is better than my office machine.
Ah, so you're kind of modeling the sharing you'd like to see.
Exactly. You're offering something relatable, giving them multiple things they could respond to, the long Monday, the coffee, office life. It lowers the pressure and often encourages them to open up a bit more. Most people will kind of match your energy if you create that comfortable space.
Okay, this is great foundational stuff. Let's level up. What takes someone from just okay at small talk to being really, truly engaging? The advanced techniques.
Right. This is where we get into what I call conversation catalysts. These are the things that make interactions not just pleasant, but actually memorable and potentially meaningful.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Catalysts. Let's start with questions again. You said they're not always the best starters, but surely they're important for going deeper.
Oh, absolutely crucial. But it's all about the timing and the type of question. The real power lies in asking open-ended questions. Questions that invite storytelling, not just simple information exchange.
Can you contrast that, like a functional versus an engaging question?
Sure. A functional one is, so what do you do for work? It often leads to just a job title, maybe a sentence.
Yep, happens all the time.
An engaging question, though, might be, what's the most interesting challenge or project you've tackled recently in your role? Or, what first sparked your interest in that field?
Okay, one asks for a label, the other asks for a narrative, a story.
Precisely. Everyone has stories, but people rarely get asked to share them in that way. When you ask about an interesting project, you're implicitly saying, I bet you have interesting things to share and I want to hear them. It's actually a subtle confidence booster for the other person.
That's a great point.
But the really sophisticated conversationalists, they don't stop there. They ask follow-up questions that demonstrate genuine engagement with the story being told.
How does that look in practice?
Okay, imagine someone says, yeah, I've been totally swamped redesigning our customer service system. Honestly, it's felt like trying to solve a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle blindfolded.
Okay, vivid image.
Right. Now, a standard follow-up might be, ooh, sounds tough. So, do you like your job? Kind of generic, right?
Yeah, it pivots away.
But a follow-up showing real engagement, that picks up on their metaphor. A 1,000-piece puzzle blindfolded. Wow, that sounds incredibly complex. What specifically made it so challenging? Was it the tech, the people? See how you're diving into their experience.
Big difference. You're exploring their world, not just ticking boxes.
Exactly. And another powerful catalyst is something called emotional reflection.
Emotional reflection.
Yeah, it means acknowledging the feeling behind what someone says, not just the factual content. So if they say, I just started a new job, instead of jumping to, oh, what kind of job?
Yeah.
Which is fine, but factual, try something like, oh, wow, that must be exciting, and maybe a little overwhelming, too. How are you finding the transition?
That feels much more human, more empathetic.
It connects on a different level. And, of course, conversation is a two-way street. Sharing your own experiences matters, too.
Right. You can't just ask questions forever.
Definitely not. The technique here is what I think of as relatable vulnerability, sharing things that are personal enough to be interesting, but universal enough to create a connection.
How does that work without hijacking the conversation?
Good question. Say someone mentions being nervous about giving a presentation. You could share, oh, I totally get that. I remember my first really big one. I practiced in the mirror so many times. My roommate thought I was nuts. But, all that prep actually paid off in the end. What's your go-to strategy for preparing?
So you shared something specific and a bit vulnerable, showed it had a positive outcome, and then immediately turned the focus back to them.
Exactly. Connect, don't dominate. And then there's the whole nonverbal side. Body language. It's huge.
Oh, huge.
Well, estimates vary, but a massive chunk of communication is nonverbal. Some say over half. You can say all the right words, but if your body is screaming, I'm bored, or I want to leave, crossed arms, checking your phone, angled away.
Game over.
Pretty much. It completely undermines your words.
So what does positive, engaging body language look like?
Think openness. Face the person directly. Angle your body towards them. Eye contact is key aim for maybe 60–70%. Enough to show you're engaged, but not so much it feels like staring.
Okay.
Keep your posture open, uncrossed arms and legs where possible. Leaning in just slightly when they're sharing something interesting signals real attentiveness. And try to subtly mirror their energy level.
Mirror their energy.
Yeah, if they're animated and enthusiastic, reflect some of that back. If they're a bit calmer, match that pace. It creates a subconscious sense of harmony, of being on the same wavelength.
And facial expressions. A smile.
A genuine smile, definitely. Raised eyebrows when surprised or intrigued. A slight head tilt can show you're listening intently. These small cues add up. It might feel a bit conscious at first, maybe even awkward.
Like you're performing connection.
Oh, a little, perhaps, initially. But like any skill, the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. My advice. Start small. Practice in low-stakes situations, chat with the barista, someone in the elevator queue. Build that muscle memory.
Good advice. Okay, let's get really practical now. How do these skills change depending on the situation? Because small talk at a big work conference feels way different than at a friend's BBQ.
Oh, totally different energy, different goals. Context really is everything. The core principles, observation, listening, hooks, they still apply, but you adapt the topics, the energy, the overall approach.
Right. So let's take business networking events, or maybe those few minutes before a professional meeting starts.
Okay, professional settings. Here, small talk is often, let's be honest, strategic. It's about building rapport, laying groundwork for potential collaboration or opportunities. People do business with people they like and trust, right?
It's true.
So the small talk needs to build that. You can still use accessible topics, but maybe give them a slightly more thoughtful or professional spin. Instead of just, nice weather, maybe, it's a beautiful morning for this conference, isn't it? I always find I have more energy when events kick off with sunshine. How's your day shaping up so far?
Still light, but a bit more polished.
Exactly. It opens the door for them to share something relevant to the event or their day, and I really encourage what I call professional curiosity.
Instead of what do you do?
Right. Try asking what brings you to this particular event, or what's been the most valuable session or insight for you so far. These questions lead to much richer, more relevant conversations in that context.
And what about that awkward time right before a meeting formally starts?
Crucial time for setting a positive tone, keep it light, professional, and inclusive. Maybe a shared observation. Wow, finding parking downtown seems to get more creative every time I come here. Please tell me I wasn't the only one circling the block 3 times.
Huh. Yeah, that creates instant camaraderie through shared struggle.
Exactly. Breaks the ice, helps everyone relax a bit. But the key rule here is be ready to pivot smoothly back to business when it's time. You don't want to get stuck talking about parking nightmares when the agenda needs to start.
Got it. Okay, shift gears. Social gatherings, parties, casual get-togethers with friends or acquaintances.
Much different vibe here. The goal is usually connection, fun, finding people you genuinely enjoy talking to. Your personality can come out more.
So the topics can be more personal.
A bit more, yeah. Think lifestyle curiosity, questions that are relaxed and touch on personal enjoyment but aren't overly intimate. What was the highlight of your week? Got any fun plans lined up for the weekend? Have you discovered any amazing new restaurants or cafes lately?
That's an easy.
Yeah. You can also use the environment more playfully. Comment on the music playlist, the amazing appetizers. Or even try more creative, slightly quirky questions if the mood feels right.
Like what?
Things like, what's been your most interesting discovery? Could be anything, a book, a podcast, a weird fact so far this year. Or the classic, if you could have dinner with anyone, living or dead, who would it be and why? These can spark really fun conversations.
Okay, but what if you walk into a party and literally only know the host? That can feel super intimidating.
Oh, it's a classic scenario. My go-to strategy, scan the room for someone else who looks a little uncertain or is maybe hovering near the snags by themselves. They're often in the same boat.
Find a fellow lone wolf.
Exactly. Then approach them, maybe even acknowledging the situation directly. Something like, hi, this looks like a great party, but I actually only know Sarah, the host. I'm Anna. Are you friends with Sarah from her work or maybe college?
That shared vulnerability makes you seem approachable.
Totally. And often, once you connect with that one person, they become your sort of social bridge for meeting others they might know there. It breaks the ice, effectively.
Makes sense. And finally, those really casual, fleeting encounters.
Yeah.
Waiting in line on public transport, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the spontaneous ones. I actually love these because there's zero pressure. Maximum authenticity potential. The absolute key here, though, is reading the signals.
How so?
Body language is crucial. Headphones in, deep focus on a phone or book. Probably best to leave them be. But if someone's looking around, seems relaxed, maybe makes brief eye contact, they might welcome a quick interaction.
And what's a good opener in that situation?
Keep it super simple, light, and based on the shared environment. Wow, this line is actually moving surprisingly fast today. Or,
Yeah.
they've really decorated this place nicely for the season, haven't they?
Simple, positive, easy.
Exactly. It gives them a super easy out. If they're not interested, they can just nod or give a short reply. But it also makes it really easy for them to engage if they are open to chatting. And honestly, some of the most delightful, unexpected conversations can start this way.
You mentioned a story about a jazz musician.
Oh, yeah. Stuck on a hideously delayed flight once. Started chatting with the elderly gentleman next to me. Just about the weather, the delay, typical stuff. Turned out he'd been a professional jazz musician for over 40 years. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Amazing stories.
Wow. All from a comment about the weather.
Yep. It totally transformed a potentially frustrating situation into something memorable. It just shows you never know who you're sitting next to or what interesting stories are waiting just beneath the surface if you're open to that initial small talk.
That's a perfect segue, actually. That story really highlights how we can move beyond just pleasantries. How to make small talk and turn it into building potentially deeper, more lasting connections.
Ah, yes. This, for me, is where small talk becomes truly meaningful. The ultimate aim isn't just to fill silence, it's to build genuine human connection. And the key is learning to recognize what I call connection moments.
Connection moments?
Yeah. These are those points in a conversation, often subtle, where someone reveals something a bit deeper about themselves, their values, their passions, what they genuinely care about. Most people honestly let these moments fly right by.
Can you give an example?
Okay, say someone casually mentions they volunteer at an animal shelter on weekends. A typical response might be, oh, that's nice, polite, but surface level.
Right.
But that mention of volunteering, that's potentially a huge connection moment. It tells you something about their values, maybe compassion, giving back, love for animals.
So how do you respond to build connection there?
Instead of just, "That's nice," you dive a little deeper, show genuine curiosity about that specific thing. Ask something like, "Wow, that's wonderful. What first got you interested in animal rescue work?" Or, "I bet you have some incredible stories from the shelter. What's been the most rewarding part of that for you?"
You're validating the importance of what they shared. You're digging into the why behind it.
Precisely. And you'll often see people physically light up when you do this. Their energy shifts because you're showing interest in something that genuinely matters to them, something beyond the usual surface chat.
How do you know how deep to go? You don't want to get too personal too fast.
Good point. You follow their lead, match their level of sharing. If they become more animated and open up more, that's your green light to continue exploring that topic gently. If they seem hesitant, back off a bit. It's a dance.
And what about sharing your own values and passions? It needs to be reciprocal, right?
Absolutely. Connection flows both ways. If they share about volunteering and that resonates with you, share something related back. But the key is connecting, not competing.
Connecting, not competing. How does that look?
So maybe you'd affirm their volunteering first. That's so inspiring, what you do at the shelter. Then perhaps share a related value. I've always admired people who dedicate time like that. For me, I've been thinking a lot about getting involved with local literacy programs. There's something really powerful about community service, isn't there?
Okay. So you're affirming them, sharing something about yourself that connects on the level of values, and creating a shared sense of purpose.
Exactly. It builds a bridge based on shared meaning. And finding those unexpected shared interests, that's conversational gold. Like that corporate guy I mentioned earlier who turned out to be an amateur astronomer.
You just never know.
You really don't. Everyone has hidden layers, passions outside their main identity. Your job as a good conversationalist is to create a safe, curious space where those things might emerge. But it's also important to have realistic expectations. Meaning, not every single conversation, not even every good conversation, is going to lead to a deep, lasting connection. And that's perfectly okay. The focus should be on being genuinely open and interested in the moment, not forcing an outcome.
When a conversation has run its course, or isn't really going anywhere deeper, how do you end it gracefully?
Always aim to end on a positive, warm note. Something simple like, "Well, it's been really nice chatting with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event day evening." Keep it genuine and pleasant.
Okay. Now, for those connections that do feel promising, how do you actually nurture them beyond that first chat? This is where I think a lot of us drop the ball.
Oh, absolutely. Exchanging contact info is easy. The follow-up is where the real connection building happens or doesn't.
So what makes for effective follow-up?
It absolutely must be specific to the conversation you had. Generic follow-ups feel, well, generic. If you talked about books and they needed a recommendation, actually send one. If they mentioned a big project they were starting, maybe check in a week or two later to see how it's going.
It shows you were actually listening and remember the details.
Exactly. It shows you care. For instance, if someone mentioned they were nervous but excited about launching their first podcast episode, a great follow-up a few weeks later could be a quick message. "Hi, Name. Just thinking about our chat the other day about your podcast launch. How did it go? Would love to check out the first episode if it's live."
That feels really thoughtful and supportive.
It is. When you actively show interest in and support for what matters to others, you become someone who adds genuine value to their network, to their life. Maintaining these connections over time isn't about constant contact. It's about quality touch points.
Quality touch points.
Yeah, meaningful interactions. Maybe it's a holiday message that references something specific you talked about. Sharing an article you think they'd find interesting based on your conversation. Congratulating them on an achievement you saw online. Just checking in when something genuinely reminds you of them.
It sounds like it grows organically from genuine interest.
That's exactly it. And these nurtured connections, they often lead to the most amazing, unexpected opportunities, collaborations, friendships, and support systems down the line.
This is so valuable. Before we wrap up, can we touch on a couple of common mistakes people make with small talk? Things to avoid?
Definitely. One of the biggest I see is conversation hogging.
The person who makes everything about them.
Precisely. Someone shares a story about their trip to Italy, and the immediate response is, "Oh, Italy. That reminds me of this amazing time I went to Rome." It's natural to connect via shared experiences, but you have to keep the balance.
So how do you balance it?
A good rule of thumb I suggest is, For every personal story or anecdote you share, try to ask at least 2 genuine follow-up questions about their experience. Use your story as a brief bridge back to learning more about them, not as a detour solely focused on you.
Connect, don't compete. Got it. Any other common pitfalls?
Yes, the opposite problem, interview mode.
Just firing off question after question.
Yeah. Asking question, getting answer, asking next question. Without really listening deeply or sharing anything about yourself, it feels like an interrogation. Conversation should be more like a game of tennis, a comfortable back and forth, not a one-sided questioning session.
Makes sense. What about advice specifically for people who identify as shy or introverted? Small talk can feel particularly daunting for them.
It can, but it's crucial to remember that being introverted does not mean you're bad at conversation. Introverts often excel at deeper one-on-one connections once they get past the initial small talk phase.
So what strategies can help them with that initial phase?
Preparation can be really key. Having a small mental toolkit of go-to starters can reduce anxiety. Maybe a couple of safe observations about current events, some standard questions related to the context, like the event itself, a genuine compliment you can offer, or even a comfortable brief anecdote you're happy to share. And remember, asking thoughtful, open-ended questions is actually an introvert's superpower. It puts the focus on the other person while still driving the conversation forward.
That's empowering. Okay, if you had to distill all this down to one single piece of advice for someone wanting to transform their small talk skills, what would it be?
Practice with genuine curiosity. Honestly, I believe the most magnetic and effective conversationalists aren't necessarily the most talkative or witty people. They're the ones who are most genuinely interested in the person they're talking to.
So focus on curiosity, not performance.
Exactly. When you approach interactions with authentic curiosity, wanting to understand the other person, learn their perspective, hear their story, so much of the pressure falls away. You stop worrying about saying the perfect thing and you start actually connecting.
This has been incredibly illuminating.
Yeah.
We've really covered the whole spectrum, from why small talk is so important to the basic mechanics, diving into advanced techniques, adapting to different situations, and finally, how to build those deeper, lasting connections.
It really has been a comprehensive look, and it's worth remembering, these aren't just talk skills, they're fundamental life skills. They'll serve you well in literally every area, personal and professional.
Absolutely. So just to quickly recap the key takeaways for everyone listening, remember that small talk is foundational. It builds relationships, opens doors, boosts confidence. It's fundamentally about genuine curiosity and connection, not just awkwardly filling silence.
And adapt your approach based on the situation, but keep those core principles strong. Observe, listen actively, use those conversation hooks, and show authentic interest.
And the real magic, as you said, happens when you spot those connection moments.
Yeah.
When someone shares something that truly matters to them and you engage with that, showing you value who they are beyond the surface. Don't be afraid to share your own passions too.
Well put.
Okay, so here is your challenge for this week. Try practicing just one new small talk technique we discussed today. Maybe it's consciously making an environmental observation instead of defaulting to "how are you?" Maybe it's focusing on asking just one really good open-ended follow-up question that shows you're listening.
And remember, practice opportunities are everywhere.
Yeah.
The barista making your coffee, the person you share an elevator ride with, your colleagues in the moments before a meeting starts. Treat these as low-pressure chances to build your skills and comfort level.
We would genuinely love to hear how you get on. Leave us a comment, share your small talk successes, or even the challenges you're facing. And of course, if you found this helpful, please subscribe to English Life Skills Hub.
Because as we've explored today, mastering this isn't just about getting better at English. It's really about unlocking new relationships, new opportunities, richer experiences. So maybe a final thought to leave you with.
Yes.
If we accept that most meaningful connections start with a simple conversation, what's one small, perhaps habitual small talk pattern you could maybe let go of this week to create a little more space for a genuine human connection to spark?
Ooh, that's a powerful question to reflect on. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights today. We hope this discussion has given all of you plenty to think about and, more importantly, to put into practice. Until our next session, keep exploring, keep practicing, and keep connecting.
Take care, everyone.